All right. Thank you all so much for joining Scott and I this evening. We hope if this is your first time, welcome. And if this isn't your first time joining us, welcome back. So hopefully, as I mentioned before, we're going to make each one of these a little bit different. We've got a lot of different ways we could go on the topic of nutrition. And so I don't expect us to run out of stuff to talk about anytime soon. So Scott, we ready to get this party started?
Good to go.
All right, well, let's just dive right in. So, first question from Suzanne at Claymont was there's a couple questions here, and we'll take them one at a time. But working out more is causing me to eat more, specifically more carbs, mostly fruit like apples or berries and rice cakes, and health healthy fats like nuts and seeds. And while my weight is kind of maintaining, my body looks bulkier. Do I need to limit more carbs or fats to get a leaner body?
So I think step one with this question would be hop on the InBody and see what's actually going on. Oftentimes, the first couple of months, really, from starting a program, you're going to see you might feel a little more firm, a little bit bulkier, but it could be from gaining a little bit of lean mass while also hopefully reducing some fat. So hop on the InBody, see what's going on, what the numbers are saying. Oftentimes, though, you're also going to retain a little more fluids from training. It's just part of the recovery process. So the food choices that you mentioned, they're all great. They're all I would never say don't eat those food sources. The key is just figuring out how much are you eating. If the weight's maintaining, I wouldn't necessarily cut anything out to start with. I would just, again, hop on the InBody and hopefully get to the bottom of it. But the food choices that were mentioned are all awesome. Those are all food choices that I would try to recommend to most people.
Okay. All right. That reminds me when you mentioned the InBody, I think that's very important. We offer that to all of our clients. It only takes you if you haven't done it or haven't done it recently, it only takes 2-3 minutes to do. Definitely want to do it before your workout for accuracy. But it reminds me of an old Jeff Bezos letter he wrote to his employees along the lines of, there's the right answer, the wrong answer, and data tells us which is which. And InBody, it's all about data and just getting numbers so that we can make educated decisions on, what changes are taking place. So I think that's a great suggestion to start there, and great stuff, Scott. The second part to that question, or just a slightly different question, also from Suzanne, was I'm hearing a lot more about the importance of omega-3 and 6 ratio. The question is, what is the ratio, or what should the ratio be, and how would I calculate it? So before you answer that question, though, Scott, let's back up a second and just explain, like, what are omega-3 and omega-6s? Let's start with that.
Yeah. This this can be confusing. There's a lot of terminology and they all sound the same. So stepping back even further from just omega-3s and omega-6s, just talking about fats in general, there's basically three different categories, three buckets. You have polyunsaturated fat, monounsaturated fat, and then saturated fat. Saturated fat, obviously, try to avoid. You keep to less than 10% of your total fat intake for the day. That's going to be red meat, just like actual animal fat. The other two, the monounsaturated fat and the polyunsaturated fat, that all these are just really referring to the chemical structure of the fat molecules themselves, and that's really it. So monounsaturated fat and polyunsaturated fat, really mono has one double bond and poly has two or more double bonds. Monounsaturated fat, though, that is typically referring to omega-9s. You don't really hear a whole lot about omega-9, but oleic acid is a really great one that's found in a lot of oils, but primarily olive oil. They're awesome. Monounsaturated fats, your body can produce these, so they're not essential. So the polyunsaturated fats, the omega-3s and omega-6s, are just talked about a lot more because we can't make them in the body, so we have to get them from food sources. the starting with omega threes, um, really got some notes here because there's a lot in it. It can get confusing. I need a really good diagram to share with you guys. Um, so ALA is a type of saturated fat or uh, polyunsaturated fat that is converted over into EPA, DHA, DPA. You might see these like on a shelf. These are common supplements. But when you eat these omega 3s, your body converts them into EPA, DHA, and DPA. The recommended intake for that is 1.1 for women grams per day and 1.6 grams per day for men. These are coming primarily from plant sources, flaxseed, walnuts, chia seeds, and also canola oil, soybean oil. I know those get a bad rap, and a lot of seed oils kind of get a bad rap. But whole food sources are going to be your best bet. Not to say that produced oils are inherently bad, but if you can get them from whole foods, that's going to be the way to go generally. Um, and then oily fish also is a really good source of omega 3s. Um, Omega 6s, also walnuts, sunflower seeds, almonds, as well as oils, safflower oil, corn oil, soybean oil. So a lot of these sources don't only have omega 3s or omega 6s. Most of these food sources have a combination of the two. So soybean oil, for example, has about 50% omega 6s and then about 10% of omega 3s. And so typically you're not only going to get one source from a particular food unless you're taking a supplement. Um, the ratio, back to Suzanne's question, is really important. An optimal ratio is 4 to 1 or less. 4 to 1 being omega 6 to omega 3. Um, Really, up until the Industrial Revolution, a little over 100 years ago, um, it was probably falling right in line with that 4 to 1 or maybe even 1 to 1 ratio. However, the current American diet is like 15 to 1 or even 20 to 1. That's problematic. So I don't necessarily think that you have to calculate your ratio specifically. I think the important takeaway is really just trying to limit a lot of the processed oils, obviously reducing the amount of saturated fat in the diet to, again, like definitely less than 10%, but as little as possible. Um, the problem arises though when you do see ratios of 15 to 1 or 20 to 1. It's really inflammatory. That's where a lot of insulin resistance and just decreased output of insulin, higher triglycerides, cardiovascular disease, all those things that are all too common. And diet and exercise really takes care of a lot of that. But I think all too often people rely on medications to do a lot of that. Not that there's anything wrong with medications; they do a wonderful job. But I think eating whole food sources, a lot of nuts, seeds, fish, all that kind of stuff, and just trying to limit the amount of processed food and everything, and that's really going to help maintain a healthier weight as well.
Okay, so to unpack that a little bit, you're saying that rather than worrying too much about getting the perfect ratio, you believe that a simpler approach, generally for most people, is just to limit your processed oil. Is that correct?
Yeah, yeah, and if you find it difficult to get several sources portions of fish throughout the week and other of these sources, taking a supplement, uh, not a bad idea, but I think the most important thing is just keeping it really basic and just eating a good balanced diet of good healthy fat sources and nuts and seeds and just trying to limit oil in general.
Okay. And then is this something, because you mentioned inflammation. So if someone, we work with a lot of clients that do struggle with inflammation issues. Is this if someone listening does have issues with inflammation, is this something that you would recommend looking into? Like, is this one of the more common causes of that inflammation that would be one of the first things that someone might want to consider?
Yeah, absolutely. And it really is pretty simple. It doesn't have to be complex. It's just getting back to eating food that looks like food, essentially, and trying to limit things that come out of packages and making sure that you're also getting enough fiber plays a role in this as well. I know we're talking about fat, but yeah, 100%.
Okay. And then one more time, just because you covered a lot. So, as far as finding foods that are higher in omega-3 and omega-6s, what would be your top couple recommendations?
Um, Walnuts are awesome, flax seeds, chia seeds, as well as fish. Any kind of fatty fish, salmon. I know mackerel's not probably super popular, but any kind of fish that's not just a really, really lean white fish. Um, yeah. And then if you fall short, it definitely probably is not going to hurt to take an omega-3 supplement.
All right. But it is definitely possible to get all uh those in naturally, but through Whole Foods. But supplement is always an alternative as well.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, great. Thanks so much for that. Next question. Talking about like this was talking about vitamins and supplements that support longevity and fat loss. And so, are there any specific supplements or vitamins that you would recommend that would support longevity and fat loss? And if it's easier, we can kind of look at those separately. For as far as longevity and fat loss, because obviously we are talking about two separate goals here. So you could answer that either way you choose.
Yeah. Um, I think I'll preface this by saying a little bit of what I previously mentioned. Supplements are great, but they're certainly not going to replace a good just balanced diet. And whenever we're talking about fat loss, again, the number one factor with this is controlling calories. Are you over consuming, or are you eating at a maintenance level, or in order to achieve fat loss, you really need to be in a caloric deficit. So that's step one. So I don't want anyone to just think like, well, I'll just take some more, vitamin D and I'm good to go and I can eat whatever. People know that. That's intuitive. It's obvious. But trying to get all these sources from a good balanced diet is important. And then if you need to cover your bases, supplements are fine. But um, I mentioned vitamin D. Vitamin D is really important for just metabolism in general. It can or may help reduce visceral fat. Um, awesome for longevity and just hormone regulation. Um, all the B vitamins, B complex vitamins, B12, um, those are all great. Vitamin C, it's a good antioxidant. Collagen support. Um, it reduces oxidative stress, supports adrenal health. Vitamin E, similar antioxidant. So a lot of these you're going to get from either a multivitamin. If you take one, you don't have to necessarily go out and buy each one of these things, but you can also get these from food sources as well. And sunshine, you get 10 to 30 minutes a day of good sunshine. You're well on your way to get your vitamin D3. Um, Magnesium, massively important for just muscle health, nerves, metabolic function. Again, you can take that in a supplement. It's probably going to be included in most popular multivitamins that you're going to find on the shelf. But you can also get those from food sources, zinc, chromium, also omega 3s. You know, uh, if you are not getting a lot of the sources that we mentioned with the omega 3s, take an omega 3 supplement. You can get it anywhere. It's definitely going to help. But again, none of these are directly going to achieve fat loss on their own.
Okay. So at the end of the day, fat loss, we're still talking calories in versus calories out. All right.
Mhm.
And with all those vitamins that you mentioned, would you typically recommend a multivitamin for someone?
Yeah, I personally go, you know, through periods where I take one every day, and then I'll run out and I'll just stop taking it. I There's not really a downside to taking them. Most of these, if you get a little bit too much of them, you're just going to pee them out. So there's not really a whole lot of risk for most normal healthy individuals, and it is just going to help cover any shortfalls from the diet if you're just constantly go go go. You're not really eating a whole lot of fruits and veggies and nuts and seeds and that kind of stuff. So I would say yeah, I would recommend it.
Okay. All right. That's fair. So sticking to that topic of fat loss, the next question we got in is something that we talk about a lot, but just how many calories should I eat to lose weight?
Yeah. This is tricky, and we mentioned the InBody. One of the numbers on the InBody is that RMR, the resting metabolic rate.
Hmm.
Even that it can be really useful, but it also the factor that's not equated into that number is your daily activity, your workouts, you're just getting up, moving around, or are you pretty much just sitting at a desk for 10 hours a day? Um, so for people that are really, really active, you can take that RMR number from the InBody. You could probably double it and just maintain your weight. For other people that train for an hour and then they're just sitting primarily for the rest of the day, you're only talking a couple few hundred calories north of that RMR number. Um, the best and easiest way that I have found is if you're looking for an actual number, weighing yourself frequently, and as well as either keeping a food journal or using like MyFitnessPal or another app, log every single thing you eat and drink into the app or write it down, and then you'll have a pretty good idea of about how many calories you're consuming in a day. That paired with weighing yourself every day or every few days, as soon as you start to see the scale go down, that's the magic number. Um, the the trick is though, if you go more than a week or two and the scale's really not budging, then just simply take off another 200-300 calories from what your baseline was. Um, the It gets a little bit trickier though if you do that same process for, let's say, 2 months, 3 months, 6 months. At some point, your metabolism will just slow down a little bit, and what you were doing won't be as effective anymore. And so you'll have to just keep slowly reducing it. So in the beginning of this whole process, I would always try to consume as many calories as you possibly can while seeing some rate of weight loss. So you're always better off being conservative and going for a really minor caloric deficit as opposed to just slashing the calories. You're in like 1,000 calorie deficit each day, and then you're hungry and tired and irritable, and then cravings set in, and you just go to town at 10 p.m. So always start off really conservative, and you can always decrease further from there if you need to.
Well, everything you mentioned sounds like really just spoke to me in regards to if we're thinking about like sustainability. We tell our clients all the time, it doesn't matter if you lose 20 pounds if you put it back on 3 months later. Like, what was the point? Like that's we want to think long term, sustainable results here. And one of the other factors that you didn't touch on, but that people need to keep in mind is that the more extreme of a deficit they create, they're also going to eat up their muscle mass as well. They're going to lose muscle mass, which is going to negatively impact what you were talking about earlier, that resting metabolic rate. So then it's like a vicious cycle that just gets more and more difficult to continue to lose weight. That's why I've heard so many stories over the years where someone gains 15, loses 15, gains 20, loses 25, gains 30, and it's this vicious cycle, and it's because when you lose that muscle, you're eating away at your resting metabolic rate. So you mentioned like a 200 to 300 to decrease your calories by two to 300 at a time. Now, are you basing that off the idea of creating like a 3,500 calorie deficit? Is that kind of your idea of where that math's coming from?
Yeah, yeah, and that's a really small deficit if somebody is new in the process and just trying to focus on uh, just keeping it really simple and basic.
Mhm.
Um, if you're looking at a 500 calorie deficit per day, it's about a pound a week. Um, I think most people would be pretty thrilled with that. So you can always speed it up if you wanted to, but you're much better off just starting off slow and conservative and then speeding it up if you ever feel like you need to. But the important part is that you're just starting to see the numbers trend in the right direction initially.
Okay, so for anyone that's not familiar, what Scott's referring to is that in order to lose 1 pound of body fat, you need to create a 3,500 calorie deficit. Now, you could have if you were on whatever that show is, Survivor, you could hit that deficit in probably a day or two, but not realistic for most of us. And so, if you take when he mentioned the 500 calories, it's the idea that 3,500 calories is the deficit needed in order to lose 1 pound of body fat. If you were to divide 3,500 by 7 days per week, you would need to create a 500 calorie deficit per day in order to lose 1 pound per week. Now, the trick here is, and this is why Scott was talking about, you know, kind of playing it by ear a little bit and making small adjustments over time, is we can determine what your resting metabolic rate is, but there's somewhat of a wild card in how many calories are you burning. Again, big difference between someone's on their feet all day versus someone that sits behind a desk for 8 to 10 hours. So but the point is creating a 500 calorie per day deficit would lead to 1 pound of fat loss, that's a huge deficit for most people. I think as adults, we tend to overestimate how many calories we're burning in general. But if you wanted to create a smaller change that's probably more sustainable, if you cut that number in half to 250 calories per day of a deficit, now you would be losing 1 pound every 2 weeks. So a half a pound a week. However, it's going to be a lot more sustainable, and you're really decreasing the chances of cutting your calories back too much, which is going to eat up at that muscle tissue. Would you agree with that, Scott, or anything else to
Yeah,
add there?
no, I absolutely agree. And I know you know this, and you could probably phrase it better than I can, but I think a lot of times people get too frustrated too quickly, and they feel like things aren't happening quickly enough, or just they're not really seeing progress. They're like, man, I haven't really lost any weight this month. When the reality is they've been gaining weight for the last 12 months, and just not gaining any weight is a huge win.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. If you have to sometimes it's definitely good to zoom out and to look at things from more 30,000 foot view. And so if someone was saying, you know what, hey, I gained 12 pounds every year the last 5 years, on average, you're gaining 1 pound per month. So if you now fast forward, if your weight's been flat for 3 months in a row, it's not that I didn't make any progress. It's, well, you're 3 pounds ahead of where I was on pace for previously. And so, doesn't mean that you should settle for that. We're all about helping you get to your goal, but understand that no gain, not gaining in some situations is actually progress. It's taken that first big step towards watching the scale go in the correct direction, if that's your goal. So, all right, Scott, let's move on to our next one. And what are some easy, healthy meal ideas for busy individuals in their 40s to 60s?
Yeah. There are a lot of them, and I don't have any specific recipes yet. Some stuff in the works, but in general, what you're looking for a protein source, and that could be animal based or plant based, but some type of protein, lots of veggies. Really try to eat more veggies than what you're currently used to. They're going to help fill you up. They have lots of vitamins in them, a lot of fiber, and fiber. We've talked before is really underrated. It goes a long, long way in just regulating your blood sugar um, and just keeping you full for a longer period of time. Um, Carbs in there too. Just go for the healthy carb sources, complex carbohydrate sources that do have fiber as well. So like quinoa over white rice. But things like stir fries, awesome. You can get protein in there. You can get a ton of veggies, and then just have quarter cup, half cup of rice, and you're not necessarily filling up on the carbohydrate sources. Um, but in general, when talking about like quick, healthy meals with food prep, try to just pick a day, put it on the schedule. It doesn't have to be a whole day, it could be an hour, and just really try to make sure that you have all the food in the house. So you've gone to the grocery store and you basically want to make sure that you have a protein source, and that could be chicken, beef, fish, pork, whatever, something that you like and that you're not going to get bored of after a meal or two. And then try to make a whole bunch of it. Try to make enough for 3 to 5 days. And then, if the way that I like to kind of approach it is preparing the protein sources, prepare the veggies, and then you're not necessarily tied to that one same meal. You can kind of pick and choose and create different things out of it.
Okay. Kind of on that note, what are some, when you're talking about meal prepping, what are some what are some best practices or strategies for meal prepping when time is limited? Like you said, just pick a date and try to make like a consistent date and work with that. Do you have any other strategies or systems that really seem to work well?
Yeah, I don't remember where I heard this. I didn't come up with it. I can't take credit for it. But it's the 3-2-1 formula. So prepping three proteins, two starches, and then one big thing of veggies. It could be like a big tray of like roasted broccoli. It could just be a big mix of a whole bunch of veggies you have. Um, but then, like I mentioned, you can kind of pick and choose, and you're not tied to one meal specifically. The three proteins, it doesn't have to be like chicken, beef, fish. It could just be one animal protein source, and then maybe some lentils or like chickpeas or something that's going to go into the dish also, and then maybe eggs, like hard-boiled eggs or something else. So you're getting a variety of protein sources, and you don't have to necessarily just sit there and eat a 10-ounce chicken breast or 8-ounce chicken breast. So it doesn't seem overwhelming, and it's maybe not as filling. I know a lot of times when um, people first start eating lots of veggies and lots of like quote unquote cleaner foods, they're like, man, I feel like I'm just not hungry. Like I don't know how I can eat all this food. But it's because they've been consuming a lot of oil, a lot of sugar, and things that are very, very calorically dense that just don't really fill you up that much. Um, the two starches, the idea behind the two starches in the 3-2-1 method is really so that it's not like you have to have two starches in the same thing, but it gives you options so that, again, you're not just eating the same food for lunch and dinner for the next 3 days. So it could be like making a big pot of quinoa and then maybe some roasted potatoes or something along with it. And then you can kind of keep it fresh so that you're not eating the same thing. Um, Roasting veggies has been a game changer for me. I'm not new to it, but it's so much more palatable and just yummy than like the canned veggies and stuff that like I grew up on. If you're not roasting all your veggies, you're missing out. It just makes it so much more enjoyable.
Yep. No, I will second that. We've been doing that in our house a lot lately. And by we, I actually shouldn't take any credit, but they don't go to waste. Let's put it that way. Awesome. Are there any simple like go-to meals that kind of balance the protein, carbs, and fats? Any particular meals that that seem to work well for a lot of our clients that really just balance those macronutrients out?
Yeah. Um, I mentioned stir fry. That's great because stir fry is something that you can put almost anything into and it works. Um, so any kind of stir fry, tons of veggies, some protein in there, a little bit of carbs. That's awesome because you can control exactly what's going in it. Um, Bowls are awesome, and by bowls, like a quinoa type bowl with, like a few slices of any kind of protein you want. You could get a hard boiled egg, throw it in there, cut it up. Um, so any kind of like combination meal like that is awesome because you can again control exactly what goes in there. As far as those are all kind of like dinner options, lunches, salads, and not just like the kind of boring like iceberg romaine kind of salad. Get some good arugula, kale, or just any other kind of green that you actually enjoy eating. They have a lot more nutrients, more fiber, but those are awesome. You can throw any kind of protein, just make a big giant salad. Again, it doesn't have to be the same every time. You can put whatever you have in there, some nuts, seeds, and then just control how much dressing or oil or whatever you're putting on there so you're not getting too over the top with it. Um, as far as breakfast goes, it could be like an avocado toast paired with an egg, um, eggs and toast, or even like Greek yogurt. You can make a smoothie type bowl. If you are someone that really has a hard time getting enough protein in, or I know a lot of people just really aren't that hungry in the morning, get some protein powder, some whey protein powder, and just put like a half scoop in with some plain Greek yogurt, stir it up, throw some berries in there. You're good to go. It's not really going to be that filling, and you're going to be probably easily like at 30 grams of protein or so early in the morning. So you're going to be well on your way to hitting your protein goal.
Great stuff. I love the stir fry and bowl suggestions. So great, very, very convenient and handy. So, all right, if anyone has any questions, feel free to throw them in the chat, unmute yourself and ask them. We've already got one that those were the questions that people had submitted in advance. So we'll kind of open it up to anyone that's got anything they want Scott to elaborate on. The first question in the chat, though, was can you recommend high protein snacks that are easy and not protein bars?
Yeah, I might need clarification on snacks. If it's something that you're talking about, like bringing to work, um, cottage cheese, awesome. There's, I want to say, like 13 grams of protein in one serving of cottage cheese. Um, if you're not so keen on cottage cheese, Greek yogurt's awesome. Um, Low fat cheese sticks, again, not that filling. They're going to be equivalent to about an ounce of meat per cheese stick. And if you get the low fat ones, there's only like 2 grams of fat per cheese stick. So two of those, and you're already at 12 grams of protein. Pair that with like some veggies, carrot sticks, red peppers, kind of cut up. Um, all those things are really portable, and it's going to be fairly filling too. But pair that with like a few slices of deli meat. Um, it could be a lunch, but you're only looking at a couple hundred calories there, and it's pretty much all protein and fiber. So anything like that is kind of what I go for. Boiled eggs. There are I'm trying to think of other sources that are not protein bars. Are you looking for like a something that doesn't have to be refrigerated?
That's an excellent question. Well, yes, yeah, not refrigerated.
Yeah. Um, Let me think on that, and I'll come up with a list. Um, yeah, John, can you think of any off the top
Yeah.
of your head?
The protein powder is the first thing that when I think not refrigerated, I mean that's what I take with me every day to work, is a protein shake. Just because, again, simply for convenience and not having, any sort of egg, meat, yogurt, cottage cheese, anything like that's gonna probably need to be refrigerated. The only I guess the only other solution would be, packing like a lunchbox or something to where it's going to keep it, cool enough. But if you don't have a refrigerator, that may be an option. But off the top of my head, if we're talking not using a protein bar, and if it's is it I guess another thought would be, well, the only other thing would be like some turkey jerky or there's we eat all when we travel, we take the like beef sticks or turkey sticks. I think they're just called like like high protein turkey sticks. So we do that quite a bit. um like anything, it's same thing as like deli meat, not that, a little higher in sodium. So depending on the circumstance, might not be great, might not be something you want to have like 10 of them a day, but we do have some of those, like turkey sticks that we always take anytime we travel with us. And I always take a protein powder with me as well. Then the second question from that is also, is there a protein bar that we would recommend? I'll let you tackle that first, Scott.
I like Quest bars because I think they taste the best. You're getting 20 give or take grams of protein. Um, the fat source is pretty much all healthy fat. I believe it's just almond flour. There's a lot of fiber, and it's not like the chicory root fiber stuff you're going to see in like a fiber one bar that's just going to mess with your stomach and give you a bunch of gas and bloat you and stuff. Those are my favorite. They're also a little bit pricier, but I think they taste really good and they don't have a lot of saturated fat or sugar in them.
Yeah, if someone, only thing I would add to that is something that we've discovered probably within the last year from another gym owner buddy of mine, that not the healthiest option in the world, but if you're wanting something high protein that's, not that tastes really good, but not, like I said, it's definitely not the healthiest thing for you, but it's also not bad. There's a company called Legendary that I wish I got a kickback for promoting them, but there's a company called Legendary that makes some amazing cinnamon rolls and Pop Tarts, and they have 20 grams of protein, and typically I think the sugar's like less than 5 grams of sugar. But and you can, especially the cinnamon rolls, we have those in our house pretty much year round, and we will put them in the microwave for like 10-15 seconds, and it's definitely a nice little snack that, like I said, is still relatively, still pretty healthy, but tastes really good too, at least in my opinion. Have you ever had the Roar protein bar, RAWR?
I have not.
I haven't either. I'm not familiar with that, so maybe we'll have to try out a new snack sometime soon. Uh, all right. Jen's question. Any advice for perimenopausal women battling a slowing metabolism and midsection weight gain? Already prioritizing protein intake, the workouts, steps, and sleep.
Yeah, it uh, it's a tough one, and without knowing the the context and like exactly what's going on, it's kind of difficult to say. But I think the best place to start, if you're already sleeping well, working out and everything, is a how many days a week are you working out, and if it's 2 or 3 days strength training, what do the other days look like? Um, Trying to build up to over time, 6 days a week of activity, 45 minutes to an hour will, I think, absolutely go a long way. And so again, it doesn't have to be just like slaving away on the treadmill or lifting weights 6 days a week. It could just be going for a walk, building up to doing that 3, 4 times a week in addition to the gym. Um, and then if it starts out, let's say like a 20-minute walk, just trying to increase that week by week until it's, maybe 45 minutes or an hour or so. That will obviously help burn more calories and just increase the metabolism. Um, the other thing I would recommend is just start keeping a food journal or use an intake app like MyFitnessPal, and really just try to get a good understanding of how many calories you're actually consuming on average. And again, this isn't a good long term solution as far as like I would never expect anybody to track their intake for a year or anything like that. But I think if you do it for 2 or 3 weeks, you'll, probably be fairly surprised. Um, just trying to figure out how many calories you're actually consuming a day. And then, like we said in the beginning, weigh yourself often. And then if you see no progress at all, hopefully you're not gaining weight still, then just bring it down, about 250 calories a day, stay there for a couple of weeks, weighing yourself often. And then if you still don't see any calories or any weight loss, maybe drop the calories a little bit further. Um, that would be my recommendation. But there could be other variables in there as well that I'm not aware of.
So, Scott, one thing that actually you mentioned to me, it was interesting. I never even never looked at it this way. Something you mentioned to me in a conversation months ago that on the topic of food journaling that I really liked. I think we both agree because we've talked about it a lot. Like there is nothing better for fat loss than food journaling in regards to getting your nutrition in line. At the same time, I would also say there's nothing more painful than food journaling when it comes to getting your nutrition in line. I know we preach it all the time. I hate food journaling. There's nothing like it just, I don't want to do it. I don't like to do it. It's not fun at all. But something you said to me that really hit home, and I've recommended this to a lot of our clients was, why not just food journal one meal a day? All right. For most people, I think the myself included, the majority of the calories come in like dinner and after. And so if the idea of food journaling, which Scott's saying, is a great step to fat loss and to getting your calories in line, if the idea of food journaling just sounds like oh, just so painful, then I would say, well, why not just start with journaling one, just dinner or whatever the meal is that you're probably having that's probably the most variance. If you're, like me, pizza one night and then a salad the next, and so it's all over the place. I would say like that's a great, I think, compromise to keeping a food journal would be just say, all right, I'm going to journal anything I eat and drink, liquid calories too, after 3 o'clock or 2 o'clock. Then to me that's kind of a compromise where it's not quite as painful. So that was a suggestion Scott brought up to me a while back that has always stuck with me. So Stephanie asked, can you tell us where the in-body info tells us how much protein we should get? What number on the in-body will tell her how much protein?
Yeah. So it's going to be towards the top of the sheet, right in the middle. It's going to be the lean body mass. And so in that very top box, it has your phone number, it has your height and weight and everything. The very first box with the actual numbers, your data in there, will have your total weight over on the right hand side. And then right just to the left of that will be the lean body mass. And so that number is not just how many pounds of muscle you have. That's really everything in your body that's not coming from body fat. So that number is usually a pretty good estimate of how many grams of protein you're kind of shooting for in a day.
Yep. Yeah, if anyone didn't catch that, like I said, the first section of data, it's just to the left of the weight. I believe. It's either the number to the left of the weight or the one right below that, or right to the left of that. But it's right there, just to the left of the weight, is where that's found. And then is Stephanie might need you to elaborate on this. Is all alcohol taboo? What do you can you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, so the question is just for either weight loss or maintaining weight. Is any alcohol is any alcohol allowed, or is it all taboo?
So is that the question, or is the question like how do we make it work so that alcohol is
Oh, I love
in
that question. I love the way you phrase it. Let's go
right?
with yours. Let's
Let's
go with yours.
rephrase, yeah, let's
Yes.
reframe that a little bit. So go ahead, Scott.
You
What do you got?
you can absolutely incorporate alcohol into a healthy diet, and you can absolutely incorporate it into a fat loss diet. Um, the the trick is you're going to have to give something up somewhere. So I always just kind of think of it as is, if I'm trying to decide, should I eat this or should I drink this or should I not? Is it worth it to you? Sometimes, yeah, it's definitely worth it. Going out, having fun with friends or a special occasion. Sometimes that dessert after, a meal is definitely going to worth it if you're celebrating. But always ask yourself that question. A lot of times, though, it's not really worth it, and it could just be just boredom, stress eating, just kind of relaxing in front of the couch, having a glass of wine or a beer or some sweets. Um, Usually it's not worth it, but just always keep that in mind. Ask yourself that question: is this worth it? But you can absolutely work it into a fat loss diet. It just comes down to moderation. So um, I hesitate saying this because it's not like we're gonna decrease the not eat a serving of protein in order to make way for the calories coming in from alcohol. But at the end of the day, it's you know are you eating a certain number of calories that is going to lead to fat loss? That's really step one, and not exceeding that threshold is imperative. So if you can stay under that limit and incorporate a glass of wine or a beer every now and then yeah, 100%. So with in terms of fat loss, just staying under a certain calorie threshold is the key there. But alcohol does delay recovery and just a lot of other things aside from fat loss.
All right. I have a lot of experience in this area, so I'll share a few other strategies that may help. The first thing though that I would suggest is to I know for myself, the more I drink, and I don't hardly drink at all anymore, but the more when I do drink, I eat. And so I think expect it's kind of doubling the damage if you're not careful. And so I would just say pay attention. Like I said, if I have more than one drink, I start snacking a lot more. And so that's something I would say to pay attention to is that like all right, if I'm going to have this this drink or a couple glasses of wine, to be you just recognize like hey, I've got to be a lot more disciplined with the food. Like I can't be snacking with that because those calories are just adding up. So on a similar note, when it comes to like, especially if we're eating out with friends, it's very common. Like, all right, well, we're going to get an appetizer, and then I'm going to have a salad with croutons and dressing and all the good stuff in it, and then I'm going to have my main dish, and then we're going to split dessert, and I'm going to have a couple drinks throughout that. And so I would say, if it's drinking when you're eating out, think about like, all right, how am I going to pick my battles here? Am I willing to, what do I if I really want the alcohol, like, okay, that's fine. But just understand that like that means I need to skip maybe the appetizer and the dessert or skip the bread before the meal. Whatever the case may be, depends on, what that typical meal looks like. But just understand it's like, all right, if I'm going to decide to have that drink, like where am I going to save calories elsewhere throughout the meal. Again, whether it's bread, appetizer, dessert, salad, you name it. Um, the last two things that have worked well for me is one, if I'm at like let's just say a social gathering where I'm going to be there for several hours, and even if I'm drinking slowly, I'm going to end up having quite a few drinks just because I'm there for so long. Something that helps, that also helps from like a hydration standpoint, is I will, my system is if I know I'm going to have more than one drink, I will alternate it with water. And so, as an added bonus, because you're going to be going to the bathroom more often, you'll get more steps in. But anytime I'm having, like I said, more than one drink, I will alternate it with a glass of water. So it also helps me stay hydrated, and it does kind of help me pace myself a little bit more because I'm consuming less alcohol while I'm there. And then the last suggestion, that something that I used to do back in my 20s a lot, was when I was consuming more alcohol, was I created like a system so that for every beer I had to do 10 minutes of activity the next day. And I would literally, after I finished a beer, pull off the tab and put it in my pocket. So I knew at the end of the night, okay, I had 6 beers. I guess I got to do an extra hour of activity the next day. And then I mean it when I say like an extra hour of activity. Not only did it help me be more active and kind of burn some of those calories off, but it also, I will say, there were times where it made me think twice, because I'm like, you know what? I don't want to work out for it. I don't want to have to do an extra hour of activity tomorrow. And so that was something that sometimes helped me, refrain from maybe having an extra drink or two. But the important thing was that I had a system in place. And to me, the math was just simple. Okay, for every alcoholic beverage, it was, an extra 10 minutes. So I'm going to do an additional 10-minute walk, whatever. It didn't really matter what the activity was, but it was just a system. So it was like, okay, I've got to burn off these calories. And so for every drink I have, I must do an extra 10 minutes of activity the next day. And that, to me, like I said, that for me personally, and for a few other people I've shared that with, really came in helpful over time. If it's one of those things where it's like, you just have to know yourself. If you're like, you know what, Scott, I'm not giving up alcohol. Like that's all there is to it. It's like, okay, that's fine. Then let's work with it. And that's kind of why I made that joke, Stephanie. It's like, all right, well, how do I drink? How do I not give up alcohol? And I get it. Like for some people, even for work, just socializing, it's kind of like it just comes with the job. And it's just kind of expected almost. And if that's the case, like I said, those are a couple different ways that I've found myself personally to be super helpful, and I know they've helped some other people as well. So hopefully that, maybe hopefully that's what some people wanted to hear. We're not telling you have to give up alcohol. Just understand the consequences that come with it, and try to build systems in place that allow for it. All right. Anything else? That was that's a great topic to quit on. We just that was our last topic that was posted in the chat. Anyone else before we wrap this up? Anyone else got any final questions? If you do, post them. If not, then all I would wrap up by saying is thank you guys so much for joining us. Two quick announcements. One, our next one of these that we're going to do is on Tuesday, April 22nd at 6 p.m. as well. So Tuesday, April 22nd, 6 p.m. Second announcement I was going to make is we are putting the final pieces together right now. Actually, the sign-up sheet should be up tomorrow, I believe, in the gym for our spring into summer challenge. If summer's coming up, spring into summer challenge starts April 28th. It's free. It's 5 weeks. It goes from April 28th to May 31st. If you're wanting help with forming better, it's really focused on 4 areas. 1, increasing strength. 2, forming better habits. 3, nutrition. And 4, stress management. If any of those 4 topics interest you, which being on this call, I'm assuming at least one of them does, then it's a great challenge. We're sharing like just bite-sized little lessons and nuggets every day, just like short 3 to 5 minute lessons on all those topics. And we're going to make it fun. There's going to be prizes as always, keep it entertaining, but that's something I would definitely recommend signing up for. Like I said, it's going to be fun. It's going to be prizes. I think hopefully everyone will learn a little bit. And so those are my 2 announcements. Thank you guys so much. Thank you.